So I don't know. My guess is it'll still be there next year, but after that, probably not. So it'll be interesting to see where people end up. But there's a spot in
Are you serious?
Cuyahoga Valley National Park that's for sled.
Oh, okay.
It's like the sign says for sled.
Haven't run it yet.
I'd like to call to order this February 17th, 2021 regular meeting of the Board of Education. Will you please call the roll?
Mr. Gomez?
Here.
Dr. Hall?
Here.
Ms. Moffitt?
Here.
Ms. Schofield?
Here.
Ms. White?
Here. Item B, agenda approval of the agenda. It's recommended the Board of Education approve the agenda of the February 17th, 2021 regular Board of Education meeting. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of a consent agenda means that all items are adopted by one singular motion unless a member of the Board of Education, treasurer, or superintendent requests that any such item be removed from the consent agenda and voted on separately.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Moffitt?
Aye.
Ms. Schofield?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Item C, opening ceremony. Welcome, especially to all our top Tigers and the family and friends that are here to support them. Our vision, Cuyahoga Falls City Schools, the hub of our community, committed to a culture of caring. We innovate, we create, we personalize education for all. Our mission, every student, every day, every opportunity. Item 2, informational items. This meeting is a meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not a public community meeting, although there are opportunities for public participation. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic found on the meeting agenda, the individual must complete a registration form found inside the attendance notebook and present it to the treasurer. Following the introduction of the topic by the board president, followed by board discussion, the individual will be recognized. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic not found on the meeting agenda, she or he must notify the superintendent and or board president of the topic no later than 3 business days in advance of the meeting. These individuals may share their comments during the board business portion of the agenda. In addition, in public session, the board will not hear complaints about school personnel nor against any person connected with the school system. An unabridged board agenda for this meeting can be found on your electronic device at the address shown on the screen. And for your convenience, hard copies of the board agenda may be found on the library table in the middle of the room. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education are on March 3rd and March 17th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. here in the Cuyahoga Falls High School Library, 2300 4th Street. A Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for February 18th, 2021 at 9 a.m. via Zoom. A Business Advisory Council meeting is scheduled for February 22nd, 2021 at 8 a.m. via Zoom. And now for our Pledge of Allegiance, followed by positive reflections. Mr. Anthony Gomez.
If you'll please stand as you're able and join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our positive reflection comes from Mother Teresa. She says, it's not how much we do, it's how much love we put in the doing.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Item D, presentations. We're ready for staff presentations. Dr. Nichols.
I'd invite our Director of Human Resources, Ms. Ellen McClure, to the podium for our Star Award. No?
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. So our Staff Star Award is a peer-nominated award. We recognized in previous years, we would recognize folks at the very end of the year. We really wanted to make that more of an ongoing event for our staff. So we nominate staff members each month. They are nominated by their colleagues. This evening's recipient is Victoria Gesner. I don't see Victoria, so I'm hoping maybe she'll wander in a little bit later. I apologize. She's not here. She is the Latin teacher here in Cuyahoga Falls High School. She was nominated by one of her colleagues in the high school. So I'm just going to read her nomination form. If she is unable to make it, I will make sure and present it to her in her classroom tomorrow. Victoria is an exceptionally talented educator who we are lucky to have in our building. The degree to which she goes above and beyond every day, creating engaging materials and bringing a dead language to life blows me away. She is conscientious and diligent in her work and is impeccable to an obsessive degree. She does this while also heavily emphasizing with our students and supporting their mental health and development by being an approachable and relatable educator who cares deeply for our students and actively supports their social and emotional development. She is so impressive, and I feel that due to the nature of her department, she tends to do incredible transformative work in her classroom and not get recognized because she is so effective on her own. Her work should be more visible and appreciated. She is a tireless worker, an empathetic listener. She has a kind ear. She is peerless in her efforts to educate her students, and she is a star. No one can speak more highly of her. Of her efforts to single-handedly carry an entire language program in which students are engaged and excited enough to dedicate themselves to a language that few spend time to learn and few districts have found value to continue, no one can find fault. She is creative and thorough in her curricula. She is kind and engaging and exciting for her students. I can think of no one else in the building who puts the level of effort and gets out the level of involvement that she does with her students. I mean this from the bottom of my heart when I say that I wish she had been my Latin teacher in high school. Please help me to recognize this absolute gem that we have in our district. And I certainly agree. If for any of you that know Victoria, she is certainly all of those things. So our Star Award winners also get a certificate. So this certificate says it's presented to Victoria Gesner in recognition of her outstanding contribution to the achievement of the Cuyahoga Falls City School District students and the support of the Cuyahoga Falls City School District staff members. She also gets a black tiger pin and then our Star Award, which she can display. And there she is. Yay!
Right on time.
That's all right.
This is an amazing entrance. Come on. Here you go, Victoria.
So this is Victoria. I'm going to send this with her so that you can read all the things that your colleagues said about you, Victoria. I'm going to give this to you too. Did you want to say anything? No. These are for you. Also, I'm going to give her the box.
Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. Glad you could make it.
Yeah, glad my door finally
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
One more time. Our next award is the Top Tigers Awards. And Top Tigers are board awards. And what I'll have are, and they're sponsored by, they're sponsored by our Foundation and Alumni Association. And here representing Foundational Alumni Association is Chris Schrader. Chris?
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate all of you Top Tigers. This is a great honor for all of you. And I want to thank our Top Tiger sponsors, Donato's Pizza, Dietz Floors, and Young Screen Printing. For those of you that aren't aware, the foundation assists with the new entrance to Clifford Stadium, the Tiger Trail, and you can still purchase bricks for this as well. The Foundation and Alumni Association does give assistance in helping to advertise class reunions. I'm from the class of 70 here, so we're having our 50th plus one reunion in the fall. We do sponsor an all-class reunion, and then we honor distinguished alumni from Cuyahoga Falls High School, as well as providing 60 teacher grants yearly, and we provide scholarships for our graduating seniors, 75 scholarships worth $180,000. So this is something that's very big that our community, in a lot of ways, doesn't really know that we do this. So it's great to be here to represent the foundation. And again, congratulations to all of you.
Thank you, Chris. To our Top Tigers, our protocols this evening. I will announce your name. When I announce your name, I'd like you to come up next to me at the podium. Ms. McClure will be here helping me give you a bag, and the bag is full of goodies. Mentioned all the sponsors that we have. I will read your nomination form, just like Ms. McClure did with the Star Award earlier. And then once we're done, you have a copy of the nomination form in the bag, as well as a certificate, a bracelet, a pin, certificate to Young Screen Printing, et cetera, et cetera.
All kinds of things.
All kinds of little goodies. All right. So those are the protocols. When I announce your name, come on up here next to the podium. Our first Top Tiger is an 8th grade student from Bullock Middle School, Lily Walker. Hi, Lily.
Oh, there you go. That's great.
Lily's nominated by Miss Bertleff. And this is what she has to say. Lily Walker is an incredible attribute to the 8th grade band. She's a person who asks great questions, has a great sense of humor, and contributes in class. Lily has shown tremendous growth over the time that I've known her, not only musically, but with her own confidence as well. Last semester, Lily approached me about playing more snare drum in class because she liked it and felt she didn't get enough chance to play. This is something that I cannot say Lily would have done last year. Lily has gained the confidence to advocate for herself. Lily also spent time learning a new instrument for jazz band on her own. Lily is a fantastic student of Bullock Middle School and is a wonderful example of a Top Tiger in Cuyahoga Falls. Congratulations. Our next Top Tiger, a 6th grade student at Bullock Middle School, Jonah Fleischer. Hello.
Congratulations.
Jonah's been nominated by Miss Swalmer, and this is what she has to say. The Bullock Middle School Unified Arts Team would like to nominate and recognize Jonah Fleischer as a Top Tiger for Bullock Middle School. He's a student that goes above and beyond and demonstrates Black Tiger pride each and every day. Jonah is a new student to our district this year and has quickly become an outstanding member of our Black Tiger community. Jonah attends class every day with a positive attitude and a willingness to work hard. We appreciate Jonah's upbeat and confident participation during in-person and distance learning. Jonah is always respectful, takes responsibility for his classwork and action, and practices safety daily. Keep up the awesome work, Jonah. Congratulations on being a top Tiger. Our next top Tiger is 6th grade student from Roberts Middle School, Madison Richards. Hi, Madison. Madison was nominated by the 6th grade team, and this is what they have to say. Madison is a 6th grader who has already figured out to be successful in middle school. She's a hard worker who takes school seriously, which is evident by her earning straight A's last quarter. Congratulations. According to her teachers, Maddie always has a kind smile for others and a very positive attitude at all times. Mrs. Rubino describes Madison best, stating, quote, "She always exceeds my expectations on assignments, and to make it better, she's a fantastic human being with more politeness in her than most of us adults," end quote. It is an understatement to say that Madison is a very impressive young lady who will continue to make us all proud. We are privileged and look forward to watching her continue to lead from the front of the class. She is our top Tiger. Congratulations. Our next top Tiger is 7th grade student at Roberts Middle School, Jacob Winter. Jacob is nominated by Mrs. Hosford. According to Mrs. Hosford, Jacob is a fantastic student and even a better person. He is someone who you will find being respectful, responsible, and safe in any classroom. Jacob is a class leader who always participates and positively contributes to class discussions. Jacob's diligence towards his own work is commendable, and his kindness seems to have no bounds. It is true that this school year has pushed students both mentally and emotionally, but Jacob keeps trucking along, earning honor roll in quarter 1 and straight A's in quarter 2. Jacob's resilience will get him far in life. For that, we are sure. These are the reasons we are proud to say that Jacob is our top Tiger. Congratulations. Our next top Tiger is a junior at Cuyahoga Falls High School, Cindy Trin. Cindy was nominated by Mrs. Taylor in the math department for the month of January. This is what they have to say. It is my honor to nominate Cindy for this month's top Tiger. As a freshman, Cindy was an honor student in my geometry class, and as a junior, she is currently enrolled in several honors and advanced placement courses. Cindy's math teachers have praised her work ethic over the past few years as she continues to excel in the classroom. Cindy also has a contagious personality. While she can be very quiet at times, she is always smiling and waving when I pass her in the hall. She radiates good energy, and when paired with her dedication to academics, it will lead her to having a bright future. Congratulations, Cindy. Our next top Tiger is a junior at Cuyahoga Falls High School, Ezekiel Martin Tungadan. Tungadan. Did I get that right? Tungadan? I apologize. I'm trying.
I appreciate it.
Say it for me one more time.
Taganin.
Taganin. Okay.
Congratulations.
Okay. Well, that's not how it's spelled phonetically on my paper.
Don't worry, a lot of people get it wrong.
All right. Ezekiel was nominated by Mr. Kern in the math department. And this is what he has to say. Ezekiel has been one of my top students since he first walked into my classroom last year. During his time at Cuyahoga Falls High School, he has exceeded expectations in just about every honors course a student can take. And I look forward to witnessing his accomplishments in AP Calculus next year. Along with being an exceptional student, Zeke is also a great personality to be around. He can always be counted on to engage in class discussions and add something to the conversation. Is going to have a bright future at Cuyahoga Falls High School and beyond. Ezekiel embodies every element of what it means to be a top Tiger, which is why it is my privilege to nominate him. Congratulations. Yeah, I have two more. Huh? I don't have any bags.
These the January people that,
Yes.
so they already got their bags.
Okay.
Got them in January.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Yes. Our next top Tiger is a senior at Cuyahoga Falls High School, Fatima Marie. Excellent. Welcome.
Come on. This is for you, Fatima.
This is flower for you.
There you go.
Right here. There you go. Excellent. Fatima is nominated by Ms. Davison, Ms. Hoover, Mr. McIntosh for the month of December. Fatima came to Cuyahoga Falls High School at the middle of last school year, and since that time, she has been an asset to every one of her classes. She is always quick with a friendly smile and waves when she comes into the building each morning. She puts everyone she meets at ease with her sunny disposition. Since beginning with us last year, Fatima has done various jobs around the school, such as collecting mail, completing mailings for our department, collecting recycling, and working out in the greenhouse and garden. She always does her best to work to her fullest potential and excel beyond all expectations. Congratulations, Fatima.
Did you already, you had your bag? She got her, yeah, her teacher has her bag because last time. Yeah.
Our next top Tiger, our last top Tiger is a senior at Cuyahoga Falls High School, Brandon Habe. Hi, Brandon. Brandon was nominated by Mrs. Davison, Mrs. Hoover, and Mr. McIntosh, again, for the month of December. Brandon Habe has come a long way since his freshman year at Cuyahoga Falls High School. The level of independence and organizational skills Brandon has developed with regards to his classwork is second to none. He consistently monitors his grades and progress book, reaches out to his teachers for extra help, and sets reminders for himself in order to stay on top of things. In addition to his stellar performance in the classroom, Brandon has worked to develop his employability skills through participation in numerous volunteer job training experiences. These experiences include working at Good Neighbors and the Summit County ESC. Brandon also has been a Special Olympics competitor throughout his time at CFHS. He is always willing to help any of his classmates or teachers and is a prime example of what Black Tiger Pride is all about. After graduating from high school this year, Brandon plans to continue to develop his vocational skills and hopes to gain part-time employment in the near future. Both his teachers and his classmates are incredibly proud of Brandon for everything that he has accomplished. Congratulations. Concludes our top Tigers for tonight. Thank you for coming.
Did you start to get your subscription yet to Mother Jones?
Yeah, I did.
You got this one?
I don't know. What, I got one, but was this the latest one?
I just got one today, so that's the one just before.
I don't think I have this one, Karen. Thank
Okay,
you.
go ahead.
you.
I moved it, so it is.
Cindy Murphy asked me to watch the card.
me.
I knew it had to be one of you, so I didn't have any qualms at all.
Going out of order.
I moved it. I know. This one leads into like part of the next. I decided. There you go.
Thank you. 101. You put that for me.
Nobody wanted to say it,
I
Patty.
know.
There you go. Okay. All right. Property tax. Good old property tax. All right, good. Okay. So I had to start with this because I was looking for something else today on the internet, and then I thought this was appropriate. Someone's dressed up as a property tax bill, so I told you your costume was too scary, which is typically what we hear. All right, so we'll start with the basics and then kind of get in to how it's affected Cuyahoga Falls specifically, especially within this last year. So an overview is that property tax is the predominant method communities use to raise their additional funds in Ohio. It comes in two forms. One would be the real property tax, which is on land and buildings located within the district. Private individuals, businesses, and public utilities that own land and buildings pay this tax. And then there is our tangible personal property. That's a tax that's levied on furniture, fixtures, machinery, equipment, and inventory owned by business. So then you take both of those, and there are two classes of real property. There is our residential and agricultural, which is class 1, and commercial and industrial, which is class 2. There are also two types of tangible personal property, general business, which is no longer taxable, and public utility, excuse me. So there are two different ways that tax levies can be implemented. There's unvoted millage, or what is considered inside millage, or voted millage, which is also called outside millage. So your inside millage, which is unvoted, is approved by the County Budget Commission, not to exceed 10 mills or 1%. And a mill is 0.1% for any taxpayer, so 1% in total. Schools generally receive 4 to 6 mills in overall, and this is the only millage that is not subject to any kind of reduction factor. So this is the only millage. We have 4.9 inside mills, and this is the only thing we ever see growth on if there's any kind of increase in property tax values. And then outside millage are all the things that are voted on, that we put on the ballot and are voted for by the community, is proved by a popular vote. And for voted levies, the purpose determines whether tax reduction factors apply. There's a few different purposes. There's obviously we have our regular current expense, but we also have an emergency levy. We have a bond. We have permanent. So there's different kinds of levies, and that depends on whether they will be subject to this reduction factor. So then there are 3 different tax rates for each levy that is in effect. There's your voted rate, which what it was originally enacted for, and that rate has always applied to tangible property. The effective tax rate for class 1 and the effective tax rate for class 2. And basically what that is after the reduction factors are considered, they take those reductions away from the voted, and you get what it becomes your effective tax rate or your effective millage for each of those classes. And it's different for each class. There are also 2 major forms of tax credits, which I've talked about a lot in the forecast. You can receive the rollback and the homestead. So the rollback is a 10% property tax rollback for all residential and business real estate. That's automatic. Everybody gets that.
And then in 1979, an additional 2.5% rollback was enacted for owner-occupied homes. That you have to do like a one-time application for. It's not an automatic thing. Some people, like my real estate agent, when I bought my house, did it, made sure it was done automatically and was signed up. Some people don't have it though. Just it's a as long as you are living in your home that you own, you are eligible for that. And then Homestead is available for qualifying taxpayers. There is over 65. There are some military veteran that can qualify for the Homestead, and so that ranges anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 of exemption on the appraised value from taxation for a single-family home. So depending on what you qualify for, that amount varies within that range. One thing that I also touch on a lot in the forecast is House Bill 59, which was enacted in 2013. And this changed the way that the state reimbursed the rollback exemption. So that 12.5% prior to 2013 on any levy, what is reimbursed by the state. So twice a year, I get that rebate, that refund, basically that reimbursement from the state for all of our levies that were enacted. Anything that went into effect after 2013, any new money, any additional money that went in effect beginning in 2013 or after, is no longer reimbursed by the state. It is on the property tax owner. So they're responsible for that 12%. As long as the levies that were enacted prior and approved prior to 2013 continue to be renewed without any lapse, they will continue to be paid by the state. But if there were to be any lapse where they weren't renewed, we would have to go back and it would be considered new money at that point in time. And then House Bill 920. Good old House Bill 920. So this was enacted in 1976. Every 3 years, the value of taxable property in the school district is determined by the county auditor. Every 6 years is the sexennial reappraisal, and every other 6 years, the third year in between there, is the triennial update. So it's not a full reappraisal like we just had last year in 2020. It's just an update. So what happens is if the property values overall increase, then the auditor cuts the school tax rate so that the schools do not receive any money. So that's what we talked about before. That's called the effective tax rate. So it takes that voted rate, and that voted rate made us, let's say, $1 million. We're not getting any more than $1 million. So however many mills that now is, based on the new valuation, is then becomes what the effective tax rate is. It prevents schools from collecting more money on the basis of increasing property tax values. But the opposite occurs when property valuations decrease. The effective tax rate can increase in order to collect the original amount of tax passed by the voters. What this does is it effectively freezes all voted real property millage at the dollar amount collected the first year the millage went into effect, no matter when that was. As I mentioned, the inside mills are not affected by House Bill 920. They are the only ones that are not. So small, very small, it's only 4.9 mils, like I said, of additional revenue is gained on property value increases. Excuse me. This does not apply to new construction or improvements to real property. So there's also a very minimal, at times, small increase in new construction. It's really not much at all. For school districts, simply keeping up with day-to-day cost increases is impossible under House Bill 920. And the main reason that we have to go back to the taxpayers so often for additional revenue. So here's an example on the next page. So you can click, yeah. So for example, assume that 4 people are sitting around a table, and that represents taxpayers, all the taxpayers in your community. And they have voted to levy themselves, to tax themselves $100 between the 4 of them. So everyone has a $25 bill that very first year. And then the next year you have a reappraisal, and that value increases. And I'm sorry, that the value doesn't increase. Yes, an increase, you get another person move in. So you have someone that came in, and now there's 5 of you. And so now that $100 is divided among 5 of you instead of 4. And so now you each only owe $20, but the school still collects the same $100 that was voted, no matter how many or how little. As you can see in the next one, a person moves out and nobody takes their place. Now everybody owes 33 and the original was 25. So we're gonna go through some examples of this here. The only other place where district may be able to, you can go ahead, may be able to see any kind of growth is if you are at the 20 mil floor. And what the 20 mil floor is, and it's for school districts, there's a 2 mil floor for JVS, but only current expense millage, inside or outside, counts towards the 20 mil floor. So it excludes your bonds, permanent improvement levies, and your emergency levies. So it's all your current expense. The 20 mil floor essentially prevents further reduction of the tax rates once it's reached. So if your effective rate gets down to 20, and then let's say we have like this year and there's an increase to overall property tax values and the effective tax rate would then fall below that. This is basically letting it does not fall below that, even if that is what were to happen with any increases to property tax value. So it will receive full growth if you're lucky enough to be at the 20 mil floor. You would receive full growth on those 20 mils there. And because House Bill 920's tax reduction factors wouldn't apply at that point because you can't reduce it any further. You can't reduce that effective millage any further. On the flip side, if you have values decline, then you can come off of that because they can increase your effective millage in order to get you that same dollar amount that was voted. So getting to that floor creates real growth. And when there's reappraisal, we are far from the 20 mil floor. And you'll see that here in a little bit, but it's nice to dream. So here's how it's calculated overall. So property tax rates are always computed in mils. So 1 mil costs the property owner $1 for every 1,000 of assessed valuation. And what your assessed valuation is 35% of your appraised value of your home. That is what's taxable. That is the assessed taxable valuation. So they take that market value by 35% and then the effective millage rate, and they multiply that. So for example, fair market value of $100,000 home is a $35,000 is what you will pay taxes on, the 35%. And then you will multiply that times the millage rate to get the amount of taxes. And then if you have any of those credits, those would fall on there as well. None of these examples are assuming any kind of credits just because it kind of muddies the water. But that would be part of it too after the fact. So here's currently where we're at, and I think I showed this before. Here are all of our current levies, all of them. So this includes all of them that are not even general fund, our bond, our permanent improvement, etc. So you can see the original voted date of each of those and when they were passed, what the voted millage was, and then I put the effective millage from last tax year and now for tax year 2020. So you can see voted millage in total is 78.81 mils. Last year, our effective millage was 52.76, and this year it dropped to 47.21. So it dropped down almost 5 mils in order to account for the increase across the county. So here is an overview of previous property tax valuation of the Cuyahoga Falls City School District. So we start with 2014, which was the last reappraisal year, sexennial reappraisal. We were valued in total a little over 2 million, so taxable value, or 2 billion, I'm sorry, and a taxable value of little over 725 million. And at that point, now the effective mills and total mills they look a little different. They're not really apples to apples on this because additional levies have been passed in 17 and in 19. So you'll see some additions to the total mills once we get there. And then you can see in those in-between years, it pretty much kind of stays until you get to the next cycle of updates or reappraisal. There may be some changes just depending on new construction and things like that that would affect that effective mills. But we pretty much stayed right around 41.7 until 2017. Now you can also see that that is also a year that we passed the emergency levy. So you see the total voted mills went up as well. So the total voted mills went up almost 5 mills, but our effective mills only increased a little under 2 mills in total. And the difference in the total mills, I should say this, in those first couple years, any bond levy, and so that's the previous bond levy, they adjust the total voted because you're trying to get to that number. So they don't necessarily look at it as effective. They kind of just change the whole thing. So that's why you'll see like it's like 0.05 off in here because they've adjusted it in order to collect the correct amount. So in 2017 in the update, you can see we had a 5.84% increase. The 2 previous years, there was a decrease. The year before that, a little under 1%, but there was an increase the prior year before that of a little over 1%. And then you can see 2018 and 2019, we got 0.07% and 0.16% was our total growth. So we're up to about 770 million, 771. The passage of the bond, the half mil, and the operating all happened in 2019. That was almost 10 mills. So you see that jump there in total mills. Voted mills went up, or I'm sorry, effective mills went up similar because it was the first year it was voted in there. And then this last year was our sexennial reappraisal in Summit County. 2020 tax year was. So we were at 82.45 voted mills. As I said before, we were at 747.213, 766 effective mills. So we dropped quite a bit. As you can see, it didn't really fluctuate that much before other than when we voted new money in, but it did drop. And our property value valuation went up 13.76%. So that's a large, we're up to $878 million in assessed valuation, which would be nice if we got more money on it, but we don't, which you'll see here going forward. So let's look at an example that we had, and I used not the same millage, but the same increases and the same property valuation for these numbers, just to kind of make it a little bit more detailed to this district. So 2019, 2020, 13.76% increase overall. Let's say we had a total voted millage of 50. So in 2019, the effective mills were 45. In 2020, it went down to 39.55 because we cannot collect any more than what we were collecting before. So you can see the two different property valuations as I showed you on the last. I think I did that wrong now that I'm thinking about it. I flipped those, but that's okay. We should, that total property valuation should be the 35%, and I don't know what I was doing there. Anyway, let's pretend. So you can see the total tax is the same for both years in that scenario. So if you go ahead. So let's look at taxpayer number one. Taxpayer number one had a 15% increase. So their increase on their personal property was more than the overall increase to the district. So those 45 mills went to 39.56 for that person as well. But their house went from $100,000 to $115,000. So now their assessed value went from $35,000 to $40,250. Well, that's going to be a little slight increase to their taxes, but really it's only like $17 a year, even though they realize a 15% increase in their valuation. Now, if you look at a person whose property tax increased, but not as much as the rest of the district overall, so they only increased 10%. Same amount of, millage and mills there, effective mills, they only went up to 110. So now their assessed value is more than the year before. It's $38,500 now, but they're going to pay less. Now they're paying about $50 less because they didn't increase at the rate everybody else did. So their portion of the pie now has become a little smaller. Whereas taxpayers number one has become not much bigger, but slightly bigger to compensate and even all of that out. So the opposite happens. You can go to the next one. With the decrease, we just did it this way. Ignore that I have that line in there. I don't know why. I messed around with this a lot. Figure the best way to put it. So I did it the opposite. Let's say we had a negative 13.76 decrease to our total values. So taxpayer number one has a 15% decrease. So he decreased more than the overall. So in this scenario, as you can see at the top and in these, those 45 effective mills went to 52.18. So taxpayer one, his property values dropped from 100,000 to 85,000, and his assessed valuation drops 35,000 to 29,750. Well, he's was at 1575. Now he's down about 23 bucks from what he was. Again, not a lot. He lost a little bit more than everybody else did overall, but not a ton. However, taxpayer two only loses 5%. So that person has a good appraisal and is well above where the rest of overall the district was. So same amount of effective mills, they only go down to 95,000. Taxable value goes down as well. So they're down to 33,250, but their bill goes up. Their regular tax bill goes up almost $160. And it's really, if you just picture one big pie or those people sitting at that table, and as one goes up or down, depending on what overall happened, it basically is going to average you back to that 13.76 up or down. And whether you were above that or below that will then even it all out. So we're not getting anything more than we were before, except on those inside mills, like I said, which is a very small amount. So what does this all mean to the taxpayers? While state legislators continue to wrestle with issues of equity and fairness in funding public education in Ohio, public schools continue to depend on support of local taxpayers. There's no quick fix or easy solution coming from the state or federal level at this point. The Fair Schools funding plan is there. It is in place. Obviously not passed yet. Obviously not implemented. It's a concept right now that is going through the rounds again, now that we're back in this new session. Despite this, children continue to come through our doors, asking and deserving to be educated. It's important to press your elected representatives to find a more efficient way to fund education, to push them to make those decisions and get that formula, the Fair School Funding Act, going. Local taxpayers in Ohio will continue to shoulder the responsibility of providing quality education for our children and until the state creates a new system of funding schools, unfortunately. And that's the reason for it. If we were able to realize all this growth with a 13.7% overall increase, we wouldn't have to go back to taxpayers. It wouldn't be an issue. But we do, because we aren't realizing anything else. If you go back and look at one of those slides, what we voted in 1983 is still the same dollar amount we're getting today in 2021. We're talking 40 some years. There's no inflation that goes along with that. So what we needed in 83 was what we needed in 83. But now, 40 years later, we need more than that, unfortunately.
I think it's a good reminder to the DeRolf decisions didn't say that property tax should not be part of how we fund schools. It said that we shouldn't overly rely on that.
Correct.
And over the years, it's now been interpreted that we just got to get it under 50%.
Yep.
And then we're good. And there hasn't been a proposal since Governor Strickland that would get us anywhere close to that. And then as soon as he lost, they threw that away. And never
We'll
went
go
back.
into all that in my next presentation.
But I think this part in particular is very important because I think people get very confused when we talk about how House Bill 920 says that we don't get more money, and then people get confused because their bill changes and they might end up paying us more, but at the end of the day, as a district as a whole, we're not getting more. And that I've heard from a couple of people, they're confused by that, and I've tried to help explain it.
I think a key piece too is, and you can go out on Summit County Auditor's website, and if you look up your parcel, there's a button on there that says, where do my taxes go? And if you click it, it shows you exactly what, based on your property values, your home, what your effective millage is for everything. Because it's not just the schools. So you may be paying less for the schools this year, let's say, but your overall bill went up. Well, there's lots of other factors involved in that. There's lots of other things that you are being, your property values are being taxed on. So this breaks it down by, here's what the school district got, here's what this got, here's what the city got, here's what, XYZ got. And so I think that's important that your tax bill is in totality. It is not just the school district per se.
Yeah, and it's the importance of if you aren't a 13.76% increase house, you increase by more than that, yes, you are paying the district more. But the district as a whole is not getting more. And I think that's hard to understand because when I'm writing a bigger check, it certainly doesn't feel that they're not getting more money because they're getting more money from me.
Right.
And it's hard to take that vision up and see how it impacts everyone because nobody is happy to pay more taxes. We understand there may be a need at times, but certainly nobody's thrilled about it.
Right. It certainly, somebody else somewhere is then paying less, unfortunately, in that situation, because it's the pie is the pie, and we're not getting any more pie unless we vote something new, additional money in. And so however it gets divvied up then is based on your percentage of increase in your property tax valuation in those update and reappraisal years. So like I said, some of you will see a tax decrease. If you did not get a increase of 13.76%, you will see a decrease. If you went over that, you will see an increase. You can see in that first example, it's not a lot for that person that was 15%. It's not a ton. But keep in mind your new appraisal also affects all the other taxes you're paying that aren't necessarily always restricted by some of the things we are here.
So I know that answered a lot of questions because as Mr. Gomez said, I think it's just a very simple math problem that people think we have. The good news is that the value of our property in Cuyahoga Falls has gone up. So everyone was happy with that news and everyone's house is worth more and that's always great news. And the overall of almost 14% increase citywide is great news. But then the next step is where the mistake is made that we must be getting 14% more in taxes. And it's that step that I think confuses the public. So it never hurts to go over this property tax 101 and I'm sure you'll probably put some of these pieces on your treasure tab on our website. And any questions for Ms. Stoikoi on property tax 101?
The only thing I would add is as we get to the bond part of our evening later tonight, it will certainly help our case for our bond rating to show that our community got a 14% increase in property taxes. So another benefit of that is that it could benefit our bond rating and potentially see a savings there.
Ready for state funding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Never. Never.
Okay. Here's what I feel like I have to say to the state like every day. Like, just give me something. Give us something here. and especially around budget time every year. It's like, just help me out here. Throw me a bone. So we're going to go through kind of the formula history. I went back to about 2005. 2005 is where you'll see the numbers, but really this formula goes back to 99. So the SF3 is one of them. That was from 99 to 2010. Then we transitioned to the PASS, which was the evidence-based model, Pathway to Student Success. And then we went to Bridge, which was basically literally that. It was going to be a bridge to get to the next formula. And that didn't really happen. So then we just went to what is current. Our foundation funding is SFPR or none, which is really what our current is at this point. There is no formula. So a little bit of background on each of them. They're pretty much all the same, with a few differences. So the SF3 goes back, it may go back further than 99. That's all that was on ODE at this point. 99 to 2010. So the key components of this were you had an average daily membership times funding per pupil. But then they assumed your local share or charge-off mills of 23 mills times your taxable property valuation. So what they look at is, we assume that your community can give you this. You can raise this X amount of money, so we don't have to give it to you. There was your categorical aid, so special ed, your career tech, gifted, poverty-based aid, and those all kind of continue throughout these formulas. They're called different things as we go along. And the SF3 also had a cost of doing business factor that it looked at. So then we went to our evidence-based model, which kind of threw all this other stuff away. So this was a 2-year, 2010 to 2011. Still basics of your ADM times the funding per pupil. But this looked at organizational units. So it looked at you should be funded X amount of high school teachers, X amount of middle school, X amount of elementary, X amount of administration. So it broke all those organizational units down. And said, based on your number of students, based on your property, all of this stuff, here's what you should have. As you can see, so that's when the state share percentage based on assessed property value is similar to the 23 mil charge off, but this was more of a calculation in that it said, taking all these factors, this is what you can support. You can support this percentage from your local community. We'll pay the other percentage. Same kind of categorical aid. And then there was also a transitional aid guarantee or capped funding kind of came into place where they weren't going to let you have any less than you had the year before. Some of it's changed. Some of it's been 100% in different years. Some of it's been, you can't have any less than 98% of what you had last year. And then there was also, but if we've shown you're making too much, we're going to give you too much for what we think, then we're cutting you off. You're not getting it. And that's the issue where we're at right now, even to this day, is that it's some ridiculous, like 80% or 90% of districts on the old formula back from 19 are either on a guarantee because it's not calculated enough to get them what they should be from the year before, or they're capped. So that formula is not working. It's not working if it's not working for anybody. It's working for the minority at this point. So then the bridge was not a technical formula. He didn't, DeWine didn't come up with the fancy name for it this last time. They came up with bridge at least. So it was a transition away from the evidence-based model. There was no formula. But what it did is it took all of your components of your 2011 state funding. So this was 2012 to 2013. So it took that state funding and your formula ADM to get you a per pupil amount. So here's what you got. Here's what your ADM was. So here is the dollars per pupil we gave you. And then when they took that and they multiplied it by your 11-12 school year and 12-13 school year, because it lasted that biennium. It adjusted by the charge-off value, the state share to keep within budget. Within the state budget, still the same other specific aid, and still the guarantee and the cap funding.
So there, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
So there wasn't much variation then with the bridge if there was a guarantee and a cap in place
Right,
with the bridge
right,
plan.
right. Yep.
Well,
Yeah, there-
part of the bridge too was because the pass was a phase in over several years. And then there was, as you see with all of these changes, they were impacted by changes of governors.
This was a
Mhm.
change
So
of
then we got a
governor.
change in governor. Governor Kasich decided he wanted to throw away what Governor Strickland had done.
Yep.
So the pass was never fully implemented because it was like a 3 or 6 year, 10-year phase in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
it was a
So we
long
were
time.
phasing it in. It was going to get us to that point where we were under 50% reliance on local property taxes. That was the goal. I mean, we never got to see. And then when that switched, we went to the bridge because they didn't want to use that model because they didn't want it to work.
They
Well-
didn't want to expend the money that was going to cost them
Cost,
from
yes.
Governor Strickland's plan.
That's correct. It was too expensive. But
Exactly.
the thing with the evidence-based model is that it attempts to get at the issue of adequacy. So, DeRolf was based on equity and adequacy, right? And so there's been a lot of attempts at equity, what an evidence-based model does, and there's a lot of body of work out there on evidence-based models, which is the Fair School Funding
Yeah,
Act.
that's what the
Is an
Fair School
evidence-based
System
model
is,
as
yeah.
well.
That's like,
And it tries to answer the question of adequacy. Like how much does it cost for an adequate education? And so that's one of the benefits of evidence-based models.
Apparently that's difficult to determine because every time we come up with something like that, it needs to be studied again.
Mhm.
And that's where we are. Are we not? I mean, this
We're
came
phased in
into-
over 45 years.
I won't get ahead of you, but isn't that where we are?
Mhm. Yep. So then we went in 14 and ignored the second bullet point. Apparently I didn't erase it. That's not true. That was from the last one. So this is from 14 to 19. It's what we're currently on. But it's your ADM times your funding per pupil. Those per pupil oh yeah, we're multiplied by your, is that right?
What are you looking at?
I look at my second bullet. Apparently, maybe I meant to erase that. Hold on. Yep, I did. So then you have your state share index. Ignore the second bullet point in both of those. Your state share index is based on your property wealth and income of residents. Same other specific aid, and then your guarantee or cap funding. So now we're on the same thing. But there is no calculation. Governor DeWine, the last biennium, basically said, you're getting what you got in 2019 and for the next 2 years, and that's it.
when
Doesn't
we say we're getting what we got, is that total or is that per pupil? Are they
Total.
That's what I.
Yeah, so if we got 200 more students, it didn't matter. If we lost 500 students, it wouldn't matter. We were still getting the same amount in that scenario. And then, of course, we all know we had the added reductions from COVID, which was almost $1 million for us last year and is a little under $500,000 for us this year. The only additional funding that we got was the Student Wellness and Success Funds, which are not general fund dollars. Those are state grant dollars that are for a specified use that can only be used for that. They are accounted for separately. So we can't just use that money, even though it was given to us. We can't just use it for whatever we want. There are X amount of specific purposes it has to fall under.
May I say one thing?
Yeah.
When we say it didn't matter whether we lost students or gained students, those would be residential students.
Yes.
All of the transfers still apply, both in and out. So
My next slide.
excellent.
So that's just the main, here's what you have. So now we have all of our, what are considered below the line transfers. So they come up with all this, XYZ at the top, and here's your specific funding for this and that. And then they say, now we're going to like true up all this other stuff underneath that. So you have an ESC deduction, which goes to your ESC. You have open enrollment in, out, which we'll get to the point, and you'll kind of see a visual of later that, we are only bringing in about 22, 23, somewhere in that like $2,200-$2,500 per student, even though the formula funds 6,020. So really, if you break it down because of our caps or our guarantees or just how it's working out, we only get that amount, so like a third of it. When a resident leaves our district to open enroll somewhere else, though, we have to pay $6,020, even though that's not what the state gave us for that child. We have to give it to the school district. Now, on the flip side, when someone comes in from another district, we receive that $6,020 at the current moment. You have your community schools, you have your STEM schools, Neomed. Now you have your John Peterson, your autism, your Ed Choice scholarships. And you can see all of this, for the most part, is money going out, not coming in. And then you have your other adjustments, positive and negative. Those are for like our CTE and special education kids that have some weighted funding to them that we do. So all this is after the fact. It doesn't take into account any of the parameters of how we actually got funded. And that is another thing that Fair School Funding is trying to eliminate, is all of this stuff. It's trying to look at how many kids are you educating, whether they're your residents, they're not your residents, they're here, they're there. Instead of us giving you all this money and then taking it and sending it to all these different places, let's just look at who you are educating and give you the money for that, and forget all this other transfers in and out and that, because it is kind of a giant mess. I feel this all the time. I just had to throw this in there because we're about to look at a lot of spreadsheets. And nobody does. I try to get my husband to. Sometimes he's impressed, but I think he's just doing it because he has to. Okay, so I know this is hard to see on here, but we're going to go over our history. So this is back to 2005. On the left, you can see what formula we were in at the time. And then the next year over is what year it was. So you see our, and I did not update this with this year's numbers at the time of our assessed valuation. When I did this, I just got that not that long ago. So you can see the variations in our assessed valuation from all the way we've gone up and then we've gone back down. Obviously this year is the largest that it's ever been so far, but this is reflective of the last state foundation payment, which didn't have any of this information, so I didn't want to skew it. The next column shows what our state share percentage is. We're obviously, since 18, we have been at 42.59% state share. And then our formula ADM for all of our students is in the next column. And then we show our state funding per pupil. In 2005, it was $5,169. Today, 16 years later, it's $6,020. It hasn't even gone up $1,000. That's ridiculous. Anyway. So then if you were to take, hey, we've got this ADM and we get this per pupil, well, then I'd be okay with it, because then we'd have like almost 25 million from the state, and that'd be great. But if you look at the next column, we only get 15.74. Calculate, that's the calculation. We don't even get that. We'll see that in the next couple slides. But that's what they calculate before any of this other stuff. And you can see down the list, we were at 16 years ago, we were at 12.2. And now we're at 15.74. That's a long time. That's not a huge increase. You can see even in some of those years, we went down from 12. We dipped into 11s, but we were at 15.9, 65 in 2014. And now we're less than that. And we're even less than that, which I'll show you on the next couple slides. Yeah, next one. So here's all these other like little caveats they put in it. So your transitional aid guarantee, you can see in here at the bottom here, we had some transitional aid guarantee to go from formula to formula and to not have any less than the last year or very similar. And then you get your total, what our calculated basic aid plus the guarantee was. That's what we're going to get funded. So you look at that. Then you can see the cap levels over here. So in 2010 is kind of when that was officially like broken down for us on these reports. Cap was 12.2. We were right under it. So we were right where we should have been for the formula, not where we should have been. And then same thing with the next year. And then from 12 to 2018, you can see we were over the cap. In 2014, we were at 15.9, and they took us to 11.96. Almost $4 million because we were capped. The next year was almost 3 million, then 2 million, then 1 million. 2018, it was a little under 600,000 we were capped. 2019, we fell under by about 100,000. And then the other things you see in the adjustments column for 20 and 21 is what we lost when they reduced our the budget to COVID. So last year, a little under $1 million. This year, a little over 400,000. They also had these other little things in here. Again, it's all this little stuff here that make it up. But they had the third grade reading bonus, and they had a graduation bonus. So if you hit your marks in either of those two areas, then you got X amount per pupil. You can see it's not a lot. It's like at max 55,000, 57,000. But then that came up to here's your total state aid. So you can see for a while it was 12.287, starting back down. It went up to 12.1. Then we started dipping. Then it was 11.9, 11, 11.2, back up to 11.9. Then a big jump in 15, 13, and then it slightly increased. And then, of course, it dips down from the 19 levels because of the COVID reductions. And then the last column is what is most interesting is that's what we were actually funded per pupil. This year it's $3,700 of the $6,020. But at times, it's been as low as $3,200 of about 6,000. So we do not see that 6,020. And most districts really don't because none of the formula is not working for them. Okay. So then let's look at all this other stuff they consider and they take in. Some of these are below the line. Some of these are the categorical aids. So you have your special education, transportation, and preschool funding, which is that specialized, but it is general money from the state. And so you can see those numbers. Then the last 2 years, we've had student success and wellness. That is not part of, again, the general fund. Those are grant dollars, but put them in there for reference. And then open enrollment in. So I put the number of FTE. So back in 2005, we had about 190 students. This year, we have almost 549. Last year was 637. So there's been a dip as well in that revenue stream because of COVID, because we don't have the space in order to keep all these kids at the distance that they need to be. And then our other adjustments positive, like I said, that's just some weighted funding that fluctuates just based on where kids are, how many special ed kids there are, how many career tech kids there are. So total other revenue then is in the final column. of what we receive in all that other below the line amount. So we'll go to our other expenses, which I'd like to point out that other revenues only is going to have one slide and other expenses has two. Just note that. So our open enrollment out. What goes in also goes out. So we had back in 2005, 112 out for 610,000. We have 400 and almost 34 go out for 2.51 million. That leaves us. It was only 392 last year. A lot of this is also probably due to the pandemic. And there's so many things it's affecting. It's hard to know exactly, but the particular reasons why, but it's COVID related. And then your community school. So those are all, that's also been another thing for people that wanted to go online, but chose maybe not to do it with the school. That only increased slightly this year. But you can see the increase in 2005, it was 125. Then we hit a peak at about in the 240, 260 range. And that was when, oh God, what's the name? E-Tech? ECOT. Yes, I was trying to think. When ECOT was a thing. And then you can see when that kind of went, and we went down to 195 to 175. And now we're done at about 160. STEM school, we actually had a big jump in that this year. It's not a lot of kids, but we were about one kid, 1.1. We're at 6 this year. So that jump, again, it's not that those dollars aren't huge in the grand scheme of things, but it is a big increase. And then John Peterson Scholarship. So this started in 2013. Yes, 2013. We had about 8 kids. These are scholarships that parents can apply for to take their kids to different places that we have to pay for through the Ohio Department of Education. We are up to almost 30 kids that go out for about $290,000 this year. And these numbers, they adjust, every time I get a new payment, they adjust. But so those aren't the final numbers, but it'll be in that amount there. And then our Autism Scholarship, you can go to the next one, Ryan. So there's Autism Scholarship. This one is a large amount. It's a large scholarship for students that have autism that can take the dollars to go take their students somewhere else. I don't have the numbers. It didn't give us the FTEs in those beginning years, but you can see the first year it's like 14,000, 60,000, 40,000. So the first time I see numbers it was about 10 kids that they actually started like breaking it out for us. We are up to 18 at the peak. We had 21, and in 2016, over $500,000 went out in those. We're at 425,000 right now. Those are expensive scholarships for the students. The next column is your ESC deduction. It's pretty steady. It's around 30,000, a little less each year. Those other years where it kind of jumps up is it wasn't always handled the way it's handled now. And so some of the money would go through in school and then to all that stuff. And now it's just kind of this small amount that's held over there. And then your other negative adjustments, again, career tech, special ed. And so you can see all your total other expenditures. And the last column would be all of our other revenues that were on that first page. And all the expenses, what's the net result of that? Well, there's not a year since 2005 that we've made out. We've lost money on those below the line transfers every year. This year we're looking at about 283,000, so close to break even. But it's still negative. And that's subject to change as we keep going on and on. So if you look at the net results, then I kind of highlighted a couple of the columns we saw before. Our state share, our formula ADM, what the funding per pupil was. Here's our total state aid. Here was our total other revenue, our total other expenditures, and our net result at the end. We'll get about 15 million this year, which is not much higher than 4 or 5 years ago. It's actually less than some of those years because of the COVID reductions. It was 16 years ago. It's gone up 4 million in 16 years. That's not a lot if you average that out over the course of time to keep up with inflation or having to not go back to the voters and approve additional money. And again, like we talked about in the property, it's where we're at right now until there are some major changes made at the legislative level, which is why it's important to make those phone calls or write those emails.
They made changes. They took away PPP.
Yeah.
That's the most recent change
Yeah.
they made was they took away a source of funding for school districts by
Yep.
phasing it out.
They phased out the
Something else was
TPP.
gonna come in, but it's been
Yep.
5
They had like a
months
hold
here.
harmless for a while, but yeah, they phased that out. And I think it's important to note with this new, I did want to add this, I didn't put it in the slide, but the governor has his new budget out and touts this large increase in that first year. It's not an increase. He's giving us what the levels were in 2019. It'll be 4 years later for next school year. He's giving us the same. He's not reducing us this next year is basically what's happening.
But he is reducing us in year 2.
But
which
he is
we'll talk about,
yes.
But he's proposing a cut in year 2 to school funding.
Yes. So
Which would take us below where we were at.
yes.
Yeah.
I just there's no formula. There's no intent in his budget to come up with one on his own. Now, whether or not he is relying on some sort of the fair school funding, I don't know. But he's basically saying what he said last budget. We'll just keep you at this level. And it's an increase. And they also use and this irritates me as well, but they also use you got all this federal government money from COVID. You don't need money from us. Well, we did get money. And yes, it's larger than some of the, than any of the other federal grant monies we've gotten in before for this stuff, but it's restricted. I can't just use it to do whatever I want. There's, again, like the student wellness, it's specific purposes that are COVID related.
And it's not, with that, it's not like you can buy the bus that you need.
Right.
Or the snow plow.
Right.
And in order to have kids in school, you had to use all that money for safety and.
Mm-hmm. We
so,
also
it
incurred
went
additional
fast.
expense.
Right.
We were not 1-to-1 on the Chromebooks. We got there real quick in order to facilitate distance learning. But that was an additional cost. It's not like we planned on buying all those last year and this summer. We had a phased in kind of plan for that, and that COVID made us do it right then. Signage and cleaning and extra teachers this year that we've had because we can't have class sizes too high. We did the remote learning academy. That also required some extra teachers depending on, how many kids were there versus in person. We've had a lot of additional expenses, and we will probably continue to have a lot of additional expenses into next year and the year after. Some of these things just may become the norm of what we're going to be required to do. Well, that's a one-time shot of money. It's not going to last forever, but if the expenses that come along with it continue on forever, we can only use our federal money until 2023, September of 2023. So we've got about 2.5 years. But that's what they're hanging on as well, as you have all this money. Well, I'd like to say a lot of things, but there's also a rainy day fund that you're sitting on with a lot of money as well.
This last particular slide is, I think, really illustrative, just to show historically the state funding in that last column and how it has not significantly increased, even though the cost of doing business, so to speak, has increased, whether it's that a bus costs more money or whether our, I don't know, natural gas costs more money or whatever it is, things go up over time, and it's so incrementally small in that column that it really points to the fact that the state funding formula is antiquated.
And combining both of these presentations is why we are always stuck in the position we're in. We do not receive any monumental increase from the state. We don't receive hardly any increase on property tax because that's essentially capped. And we don't have any other major revenue sources. I mean, that makes up about 80% of our revenue source. So we have to go back to the voters. And they put the burden on the local taxpayer is what's happening. I don't like doing it. I would love to never do a levy again. In my time, it would be great. But that's just not the reality right now.
Well, I think what's great about the Fair School Funding Act is that all of these other formulas have been deficit mindset where, like, we give you we say 60-20 is what you're gonna get, but then we chisel away and chisel away and chisel away. But what Fair School Funding is proposing is this is a base amount, whatever the number that they determine. This is a base amount it takes to educate a child. But if you have these other factors, like you're a high transportation district, that's going to increase costs. So we have to give you a little more for that. Or if you have a lot of special education, that's going to increase costs. So we have to give you more for that. And so it's that asset-based mindset of everybody has a certain cost that it costs to educate, period. And we need to, have some floor in that and then recognize these other mitigating factors that different districts have. And how do we add on and get to a place where we're giving each district the amount of money that district needs?
Yes, for whoever you're educating, wherever they're from.
Because it's not just this many students, because all of our students have different needs and different students come with different needs and necessities and expenses as well. So, but the other thing I want to say, because I don't want anyone who might be listening or hearing this to think that we're moaning about money because we're setting you up for levy. We're not asking for a levy.
No.
I want that to be clear and on the record, and I know that we're all in agreement. We're going to ask for renewals of existing funds, but this isn't some sort of setup to try to ask for new money either. It's just
this is the general bleak reality for a lot of districts that do need money. We are lucky enough right now to not be in that position, but there are plenty that are.
I just don't want people to hear, oh, the school board was complaining about money. They're going, that's not the point of it. It's about seeking understanding.
Yes.
So while we were sitting here, I just pulled up the United States inflation rate year by year. And in general, it's right around 2% inflation year over year. And we're talking about us being essentially it's stagnant since 2000, whatever. So, I mean, that would be an interesting column as well.
That would be
If we just added cost of living on and nothing more.
Right.
What would that funding level be at that point?
Right. 2011, the inflation rate was 3.2%, and it would be an interesting column to throw on there and say, okay, this is where we would have been.
Yep.
Right.
And there's always, as you see on there, we added in a John Peterson and an Autism Scholarship, and we're lucky enough at this point that Ed Choice doesn't affect any of our buildings. But it's just like they're kicking that door open just to kind of they want to fling it, and and that's basically based on your report card, and if they consider you a failing district, and that doesn't mean an F rating. That I mean, some of those schools that are on there we're at like B's and C's. But if I want to take my dollars and go to private school, I'm taking not my dollars, I'm taking your dollars as at the school district. And I don't even have to have ever stepped foot in this district or ever been educated here. Like I said, we're lucky right now, but that is a huge potential down the road. And it's a huge problem for districts right now that are just losing money for that, for students they've never even seen, educated, had any interaction with. I have my own gripes, as you know, the non-publics, the money that the state flows through to us, did not receive a cut at all in the last 2 years, even though we have. Actually, they got a little increase this year on a per pupil basis.
But they're not very grateful, are they? They don't like to do their part in that.
One thing that I would like to say to all the taxpayers is that it behooves everyone to study what is going on at the state level, because we have people who have been elected who are not public school advocates by any means. And as you briefly mentioned, their goal is to funnel more of our funds that we work so hard to get into places that don't benefit public schools. And they are actively pursuing that.
And that are not held to the same standards.
Right, and very aggressively. I've always said apples and oranges are not a part of our state funding. And I've not played the game, but I've been in public education so long that it's depressing. When I saw the other negative adjustments, I thought I'm part of that because I've become so negative about I've always been an optimistic person, but every year it never happens. And after a while, it wears you down. We need to have people at the state level who are being heard from by local residents to say, let's get this fixed. People have been working so hard to fix this. And I hate to raise my voice or get emotional about this, but every time we think we might be close, the legislation says, but we need to study this again. We need to go back and take another look at it. And last year it was almost there and we didn't even get it to the table to vote on it, but it was so close. And now it's back being studied again. So please, please, please pay attention to what is happening at the state. Please, please, please write to your legislators and please, please, please tell them that we've been funding, because you expect us to at the local level, our schools for years, and we would appreciate a little bit of the money that they've been saving on our backs over the years back, so that we can give the kids exactly what Durrell asked for, an equitable and fair education. So I will get off my soapbox. I'm sorry that I got on it, but it's so dear to all of us. We want to do the best for our kids. And when you have people that don't want the same thing, or say they do, but it doesn't come to you in the form of dollars, it's so disheartening. So thank you for all you're doing. Thank you to people who have seen this coming and have made cuts over the years, but you can only cut for so long. Our stone or our turnip doesn't have a whole lot left. And you've done a remarkable job with the funds that we have, and I'm so appreciative of that. But it sure would be nice if someone would say, hey, here's some extra money, do what you need to do.
Any final questions for Ms. Stoikoi? Thank you so much
You are welcome.
2 presentations. We appreciate your work on this. We're ready for item E, Treasurer CFO's business consent agenda.
I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve all items listed in the treasurer's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just a minute.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Moffett?
Aye.
Ms. Schofield?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Item F, Treasurer CFO's business, Mrs. Stoikoi.
I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the January 2021 investment schedule and monthly spending report.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. You're up again.
Okay. That's good. again, this month is very similar to December. We were about $2,600 in interest. It's not a lot. These are some of our lower balance months, and obviously the rates are not high right now. So whatever we get is, I'm thankful that it's something. But we should start to see a little more now that we're receiving our first half settlement from the Summit County. The 001, that one, yeah. Okay. This is gonna be very similar to December's as well. We brought in about $2.6 million in the general fund, which is up from last year, down a little from the year before. And a little bit more than last month by about $1 million. And most of that is due to the fact that we received our rebate from the Bureau of Workers' Comp, which was almost $1 million. Otherwise, it would have been very similar to December. Expenses in January, right on track. Obviously, down from 2019, up a little from 20, but as you can see, in December we were at 4.8, and this year we were 4.3. So we're about 4.5. So the net result is negative, but not as much as years past. We're at 1.8, and then it was 2.3 and 3 the previous 2 years. So right now we are at $10.8 million cash balance, which you can see is still a healthy amount over the last 2 years. We are at $5 million from last year at this time, and about $6.5 million from 2 years ago. So in February, we did just receive our first advance from the county last Friday. So we'll start to see those come in February and March then. The 006. Okay, cafeteria. And this one is just, again, this is another skewed by timing a little bit. January, we received $37,951. But February, I think it was 1st or 2nd, we got about $95,000 in our federal reimbursement. So that made a big difference. If you go down, about 112 in expenditures. So the net result is negative, about $75,000 for the month. And we were at negative $101. Like I said, we got $95,000 like the next day after we closed. So that will make that a positive balance, but it is still has $200,000 advance in it right now. But the $95,000 reimbursement from January in that time period is promising. If we can continue with that and continue sending meals home with students and doing the pickups and trying everything we can to get those in students' hands, I think we'll be okay if we continue at that pace for the rest
Okay
of
with
time.
reimbursing the general fund for the advance, or okay?
Yes, I'm hoping at least a good portion of it. That we won't have to transfer, if anything, very little at the end. If we can average those amounts that we did in February for the next few months, I think we should be okay. We don't have a lot of expenses other than payroll in like May and June, just because we're, school's wrapping up, so we're not really expensing much on the actual food anymore. So I'm hoping that will get us back to at least close to break even at that point. But we will see, because it's ever changing on what's going on. So
May I ask, is there an additional expense in the supplies that are needed to send the food home?
yes, there is. We are paying for that portion out of CARES Act funding. I think we paid about $35,000 in like the paper products that it takes to bag them and send them home and box everything and that. So we paid for that out of CARES funding so far because obviously that was something that was COVID related that we were able to use those funds on, as we were not doing that in the past, obviously. So yes, there is an additional expense, and there's an additional expense personnel wise sometimes for that as well. That is not reimbursed necessarily by a CARES fund.
Bears repeating though that we are fortunate that in normal times, Chef Bill runs that so
Yes.
efficiently.
Yes, he
So
does.
few districts anymore that run their own food service see any types of profitability or financial savings, that they're always transferring from their general fund. So
They actually,
when we get back to whatever normal is going
Yeah.
to be in the future,
Yeah.
I know that Chef Bill can get it back to where it was.
they're actually in our, we had a quarterly magazine OASBO puts out, my organization, and that was one of the articles was how many districts run in the red, and it was an astronomical number. It's not often that you run in the positive number one, or to the amounts that you saw up there that he was running in past years in normal times. So kudos to him for sure, because it's not an easy thing to do.
Any questions on any of these financial reports?
I just want to add, this is the positive side to the negatives, you know, that with what we have, whatever it might be, and it might not be as much as we want it to be, but with what we have through really the generosity of the community through
Yes.
voting an additional village, that we're able to keep a strong cash position that keeps us stable, and that keeps us from having to plan future levies at this time.
Yep. Sure does.
We're ready for roll call.
Ms. Moffett,
Aye.
Ms. Schofield,
Aye.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez,
All right.
Dr. Hall.
Any additional comments?
Just real quick, our audit was released yesterday, so it is out on the state auditor's website. Most of you are in on that call, but anyone could view it. This is the first year that the district has done a CAFR in a long time, which is a comprehensive annual financial report. It's all one document out on the auditor's website. It just gives a little bit more statistical information and in-depth information. It has a kind of a narrative of the school, first couple pages, and accomplishments from last year. So it just provides, I shouldn't even say a lot more information than a typical audit does. And so that is out there now. And it went well, given all things with COVID and them in and out. We were able to get it done and wrapped up those deadlines, which is also kind of nice to do the CAFR, because that it's a sooner deadline, so then they can't hang around forever because we have to get it done. So it didn't occupy as much of our time with the auditors too as well, because there are some deadlines to get that filed, and there's a CAFR. So that is out there. It's available. I will put it on my section of the website as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoikler. Item G, Superintendent CEO Business Consent Agenda.
Oh, those are your comments.
Yep.
I got lost there. Thank you, President Schofield. Members of the board, it's recommended that the Board of Education approve all items listed in the superintendent's business consent agenda.
So moved.
I'll second. Any discussion?
Yeah, you will get an addendum to the program of studies that we're happy to announce that we will be having CCP Spanish back, elementary Spanish 1 and 2.
Oh, good.
That just happened basically today. So you will get an addendum to it, and that'll appear on the March 3rd agenda. But I did want to share that with you. And that CCP program will be through Kent State.
Thank you. Roll call.
Ms. Schofield,
Aye.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Ms. Moffett.
Aye.
Item H, Superintendent, CEO's business, Dr. Nichols.
Try to catch up to your page. Okay, in terms of comments, just a few brief comments. I already mentioned the Spanish CCP course through Kent State. We will be doing at our next Alliance meeting, we'll be doing another Kiva type activity. It's not exactly a Kiva, but it's a Kiva type activity that's engaging some of our parents as well as our business folks and of course educators. Take place March 9th, and Chris Smith will be joining us for about 15-20 minutes and just talking about the process associated with, what is educational visioning, what is the plan with regard to community engagement. So it's not going to be our educational visioning that we had during the bond portion, pre-bond portion, but it will be discussing what that process looks like, and we're happy to have Chris join us for that piece. We have 2010 graduate that's going to be in Jeopardy Friday night. Lauren Menke will be appearing on Jeopardy Friday night, so tune in. It's one of my favorite shows. So I will be trying to tune in as well. Unfortunately, Anthony will be racing at that time too, so I don't know. And then I guess the DVR works. And then I want to praise my colleagues across the way from me with regard to this weekend. They did a tremendous job, and one of the leaders' jobs is to hire good people and train them so that they can do the work when you are away and can't do the work. And they did a bang up job this weekend. Ellen with the vaccinations, and then Joe for the first time ever I had anybody else call off school. But yeah, we brought him in prior to my departure, coached him up, and he did a great job.
It was noted that he didn't close the scene.
Well, Joe had his thing in the family, and his family told him not to.
I asked my family, and it was a unanimous, that's Doc's line. I was outvoted.
So, but thank you both so much. I really, you know how much I depend upon you, and you always come through for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols. Item I, board business. 1, bond resolution. It is recommended the Board of Education approve a resolution providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $80,611,136 for the purpose approved by the electors of the school district on November 5th, 2019.
So moved.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
We want to just put a little clarity to this so people can understand what we're doing. Dr. Nichols.
Okay, thank you. Essentially,
Not me, but you.
yeah, thank you. Essentially, we're making the next step that we can go to market with the bonds. You had mentioned our interest rate or our credit rating earlier. Credit rating and then interest rate, and then we sell bonds. And if you look deeply into this very long resolution, we'll be selling bonds at increments of $5,000. And we will be offering them to our community members should they want to participate in the purchasing of bonds. So this is another big step in terms of our construction project. So once you sell the bonds, then you get the money, and now you can start rocking and rolling. So is that fair enough?
Can you give us a little bit on how we are working to educate the community on the steps that we're taking.
Well, I talked to John earlier today, in fact. I sent him the updated timeline with the resolutions. I assumed they would pass tonight, so I updated him the timeline. And we have an article coming out in the Roar, I believe, that we're working on in terms of the 6 through 12 construction project. I'm trying to put it into understandable terms, but also sharing where we are in that timeline. Christy has done a fabulous job with the preliminary official statement that is nearing the end. But that preliminary official statement, as you know, from our presentation the other day, that you are giving, it's like a prospectus that you're giving then to the purchasers of these bonds so that they can be assured that their investment is secure. So that's about done. This is a huge step in the process. And then, like we said, those other two parts, the credit rate, credit rating and interest rates. So we hope to put that to answer your question. We hope to put that into an understandable form in the Roar, and then post on the website, so on and so forth.
And then one last thing while we're on this topic, have we heard back from OFCC on the proposal we set them?
On the drawdown schedule,
Drawdown.
we have not heard on the drawdown schedule, which I'm actually taking as a good thing. They are trying to drag their feet, right? Because they don't want that big bill at the end. And Chris at TDA has offered them a proposal. I shoot him a message and ask him tomorrow, but I would assume that I've heard something that I haven't yet.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Ms. Moffett,
Aye.
Ms. Schofield.
Aye. Item 2, resolution authorizing the school district board to participate in the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission Classroom Facilities Assistance Program, LAPS Segment 1.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. So
If you want more additional information here, we are. So we talked a little bit about the transition to ELP, from CFAP to ELP and those kinds of things, but never reached project agreement with OFCC. No fault of anybody's. It was part of the budget, part of that transition. And we were actually having an opportunity to transition to ELP, which would have been limited to our funds only, right? And have to do a construction project in really 2 phases, the one that we have right here. But then as it became more clear that OFCC was going to get a bump from the state, they got that bump. And so we continue to be in what's called CFAP, Classroom Facilities Assistance Program. And so this is essentially a notice of conditional acceptance that we are sending down to OFCC, and they will then place us on the April 22nd commission meeting. And the April 22nd commission meeting, once approved by the commissioners, then it goes to the controlling board. Controlling board are the folks that release funds. And then you enter into a contract with the state, with OFCC. And that is your project agreement. That's what that is. And once you're there, that's the next hurdle. Now you're in a partnership with them.
We're reconfirming where we were, since we voted to switch and they didn't really switch us. We're just kind of
That is correct.
saying we recognize that this is where we are. Let's all be on the same page.
That is correct.
Okay.
any further discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Ms. Moffett,
Aye.
Ms. Schofield,
Aye.
Ms. White.
Aye.
Item 3, policy first reading. We have an action item this evening. There are some additional policies that have been revised for your review.
These came to us and they were on our agenda for our August policy committee meeting. At that time, we weren't bringing any of the OSBA policies to the board. We fully assumed that they would be in our last set of documents that we approved at our last meetings. I did get word today, however, that our final draft would be to us in a couple of days, and the board doc portion, in other words, online, the online portion would be there. I will be interested to see if these are in there. I would doubt it. I'm just saying, once they are officially board approved, then we can place them into the document and move forward with that piece. Also, praise also to cabinet members. They continue to lead our administrators through an educational process on all of the policies. Ryan's taken a long time. I gave the rookie the biggest section.
We did a lot of work on policy. We gotta make sure we know.
So yeah, that's where we are, and we're just moving along.
And a lot of these, well, the vast majority of these are related to changes at the federal level in Title IX. And that impacts so many of our policies. That's why there's so many there. And that's another benefit when we get our NSBA membership, because there's already talk about whether or not those Title IX changes are going to be rechanged by the new administration. So we're changing our policy to be compliant with what Title IX is today. Title IX could change tomorrow, and then we would change our policies again to be federally compliant. So as we saw with the presentation, as governors change, we have to change. As presidents change, we have to change. Anytime leaders change, they change what we have to do, and we try to do our best to keep up and stay compliant.
We'll move on to item 4, future agenda items.
I just want to ask if we could have return to school back on all the agendas for now. I think we've got a lot going on with that. And while we're not at a place to make an announcement, I think it would be good just to have it on there, even if at a meeting, it's just, we're saying where we're at. I think the community would appreciate that. I've been getting a lot more questions from people about that. I like to see us come back to the student worker conversation sooner rather than later, especially see if we can do something with maintenance, because I know our maintenance people are just exhausted. They're working crazy amounts of overtime and they're tired. And if we can't, if student workers isn't the fix, then let's try to explore some other things, because I know that they're tired. I talked to them Saturday. They're tired. And it's not that they're not good people doing good work, but they're exhausted. They're exhausted. We got to figure something out there. So those two things, if we could please.
Got it.
And if we could go over the new CDC guidelines for schools with the return to school.
Okay. Yeah, I can make additional comment there as well, given my weekly conversation with Summit County Public Health. So they will take the CDC guidelines and make them ours, essentially, and issue something for us.
Any additional items for future agenda? Let's move to committee reports. Alliance for School and Community Growth, Mrs. Moffett.
I would like to thank Ms. Udon for sending the board members all of the jargon and acronyms that we discussed at our Alliance meeting on February 9th. Believe me, it makes conversations during our meeting much more understandable, because we throw these out and people assume that maybe we understand these, but I'm sure a lot of businessmen may not know about the SAT or the OIP or the OT or the 504, all of those things, just as we educators may not be aware of an SEO, a PPC, friction, infographic. So all of those terms, phrases are now in front of us, so that when people speak, hopefully we have a better understanding of the common language that we exchanged during our alliance. And folks, we are so lucky to have these business people on our alliance. They are wonderful assets, and they are so willing to do what they can for our kids in our schools. So it's been a joy to be on this committee, and they continue to do awesome work. So now we can at least understand each other, which is much better. So thank you for this.
Thank you, Ms. Moffett. Athletics and Activity Council, Dr. Hall.
We are going to meet on March 15th.
Thank you. Board Policy, Ms. White or Mr. Gomez.
Just getting through what we have, I think. So,
Business Advisory Council, Mrs. Moffett and Ms. White.
we meet Monday at 8 a.m.
Financial Advisory Committee, Dr. Hall.
We'll meet tomorrow morning.
Foundation and Alumni Association, Mr. Gomez.
Yes, we met last Tuesday evening via Zoom. We approved our goals and budget for the year. Our membership campaign, our original goal, I believe, was 50 members. We are now up to 73 dues paid members, getting towards 100. We're very proud of that, very excited about that. Even better is that the membership is $25, and then we ask if people would like to pay more than that. Like if you add on $10 and pay $35, then that additional money goes towards a scholarship. And through people adding on to their $25, we're able to fund 2.5 additional scholarships this year. And what that means is approximately $2,500 from that. Plus just making connections with alumni that perhaps would like to make larger donations as well, but weren't as aware of how to do that. Now that they're aware of what the foundation does, they're able to do that. You saw tonight, Chris Schrader, who's one of our trustees, came. We're going to try to get more of the trustees to come when the top Tigers are here. Not that Gary doesn't do a good job, because we all appreciate Gary Metcalf, but to make more connections, and maybe that's something somebody they know, maybe a top Tiger is going to be from their neighborhood, just to get people to realize who these people are, that they're just part of our community as well. And then lastly, we are ready to announce our distinguished alumni, and Mrs. Moffett is going to make the announcement of who our distinguished alumni will be.
We are thrilled to announce that we have 5 distinguished alumni that will be honored this year. Last year, we did not have any due to COVID and just the uncertainty. Unfortunately, we decided at our last meeting that it will be a virtual event. We are still apprehensive about bringing a group of people together in the auditorium. We are recognizing Dr. John Mundorf. He is currently working in the field of education. He's very active in Florida, but he goes across the nation to introduce new programming to teachers who are very excited. He also studied in Australia last year, so we're excited to honor John. Dr. Kyle Melman, who is an orthopedic surgeon locally for, I believe it's Crystal Clinic. Dr. Mark Blazer, who has been working with cancer research. He works in Columbus. Bill Clifford, I don't know why he's never been honored as a distinguished alumni. He is the person who is honored by all his family. Clifford Stadium, he was a local funeral director. His daughter Marty then took over the business when he passed away, and now Bill Clifford's grandson is part of the Clifford Shoemaker Funeral Home. And the last one is Dr. Dennis Taylor. He was, I know because he's my brother, and that's not why he's being honored, but he was a 1969 graduate. He has done work internationally through the U.S. State Department on an LSI program, which involves fresh water. And he has been working with the State Department. They would like him to expand the program, but unfortunately, due to COVID, he is not traveling internationally to Pakistan, the Dominican Republic, and won't be expanding it to other countries. So what he's decided to do with all of his downtime, which he never has, is working on some true programming programs with the Cleveland School District. And they're going to be developing an awesome program to study the environment and its impact on trees and the necessity of planting trees. So hopefully we can become a part of that as well. It's a wonderful program. So those 5 people will be a part of our Distinguished Alumni Program. The program is set to take place May the 10th. And we're hoping that people will be able to join us to see not only our scholarship recipients from our high school, our teacher grants that will be awarded that night, but also hear messages from the distinguished alumni and see what they are currently doing in their fields. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez and Mrs. Moffett. Back to you for legislative liaison.
Just one real big thing to report on. House Bill 47 is moving through the Ohio House, and what House Bill 47 does is take out end of course examinations for this year, as well as directs Superintendent Paul DeMaria to apply for a waiver for federal testing for this school year. So that's the big piece of education work that's going on. It doesn't seem like it has a lot of opponents, but it also doesn't seem like it has a lot of proponents. But it's the biggest education bill moving through the state house right now. It's actually getting hearings and being talked about. So we'll see what happens with that. Certainly the end of course things piece would be great. I know that Miguel Cardona, who will be the education secretary for President Biden, has said that he does not want to grant a federal waiver for federal testing this year, and I don't suspect that that will change. So regardless of whether or not House Bill 47 passes, I think federal testing will be a requirement this year. And I know that Ms. Dudones is prepping with that reality in mind, because you have to, unless they tell her tomorrow. Otherwise, I know she has to keep preparing with that in mind. So
That's a sentiment out of a state report card committee too.
then it's not going to happen. Yeah.
Thank you,
I'd be
Mr. Gomez.
surprised. Let's just put it that.
Student Achievement Liaison, just some announcements. The next district leadership team meeting is Monday, March 1st. The Ohio Department of Education, and continuing their work with teachers from all different content areas, are focusing on physical education teachers during the month of March. They'll have hour-long after-school sessions on Google Classroom, idea sharing, and lesson planning during a pandemic. We talked a little bit about the spring administration of Ohio's state testing. Both windows for language arts and math, science, and social studies have been extended by 1 week. So should those tests still be given, the window is now March 22nd through April 30th for language arts, and March 29th through May 14th for math, science, and social studies. You probably heard on February 9th, Governor DeWine's press conference, where he announced that school districts had until April 1st to create extended learning plans for students to make up for lost learning time due to the pandemic. ODE is developing a template that will go out to school districts that they can use to develop and submit their plan. The recommendation is that some of these ESSER 2 funds that we recently received would be used to fund an extended school year, so to speak, or some summer intervention for children who have experienced COVID slide. There's not much more out yet on that, but it is coming, and I'm sure that there's conversation here in the district underway. Let's move to comments, and we start tonight with Dr. Alex Hall.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate gratitude for, especially for Ellen, for the vaccine clinic, because a couple different times we had some issues with people just having problems, like, with like an identification or whatever it was, and you were really the person that we all turned to whenever there was a question. So thank you very much for making that go smooth. Also, my congratulations to Miss Menke for getting on Jeopardy. It's like a really difficult process too. It's not like they just call you and say, "Do you want to be on Jeopardy?" You have to there's a lot to it. So that's awesome that she's gonna be on there. And I also want to congratulate the drama students who put on the one acts. Having one acts on my television because I have a Chromecast was awesome. It was a really cool way to participate in that on a Friday night. So that was great. And I also just want to recognize the fifth graders at Richardson who did those letters to the seniors. What a cool thing that they did. Really great way to help, keep community going during this time. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Mrs. Moffett.
I'll check out a couple things. And I would also like to thank Chef Bill because he had a quick turnaround to adapt the meal distribution due to our unexpected snow day and our holiday. So he was able to get meals out to students. Once again, kudos to Christy for our audit. I mentioned it before, but she really got compliments from Carol Petro. So thank you for that. And I think the last thing was for Joe and his department for snow removal, because I know how much time it takes to do that. So please thank all of your personnel for making it accessible, I guess, for us to get to school today. So thank you. That should do it for now.
Thank you, Mrs. Moffett. I'm up next. I would just like to thank Dr. Rachel Seifert and members of the Elementary Literacy Study Committee. In our Friday packet, we received their study report, which we were patiently waiting for. It was well worth the wait. I can't wait to hear their presentation on March 17th. Some of the best work I've seen in this district, and that committee's to be commended for the time and energy they put into creating that document. That's all I have. Ms. White?
Well, I'd like to congratulate Jennifer Stedman, Cuyahoga Falls high school teacher, for making the grade. Amazing teacher, which she truly is. She is awesome. I was lucky enough to teach her when I was still here. And I have bad news. I don't know, but I always want to do the obits anymore, but it's bad. I know, but Lois Ann Applegarth was a teacher at Price, and she passed away. And she taught, I think, 8 years, something like that, quite a while. So sorry about that. And then a good friend, Kay Lewis, passed away. She also taught at Bolick Middle School. She taught home ec, and she was a teacher for 20 some years as well. Her husband, Gary, had died not recent, but about 6 years ago as well. And I was lucky enough to teach with both of them as well. I would also like to thank Drug Mart, the pharmacists that came. I don't know that they all work on Saturdays, but they came, they gave their time. They were very nice. And I just so appreciated them doing what we needed. It was just wonderful to see how many came and supported not only our district, but others. And then I also wanted to extend a gratitude to Ellen and Peggy, who helped set up. It was done so well and just went really smoothly. So thank you very, very much. Finally, I'm reading books, not only our book study book, but other ones. And I finished the one, and to me, I didn't know what particularly they meant, but I thought I'd bring these and share these and give these to the board. You can kind of see the core knowledge, which was mentioned in the literacy thing. And this is just one strand for language arts, but you can see they preschool, kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, listening and learning strand. And I got these from New York, Engage New York it's called. They're all free. You can download. I couldn't download everything. It would have been too much. But I just want to give you an example of what it is. And I just thought it was really, really interesting. I think the two books could combine very well and support each other in what they're saying. So I just thought that was neat because it starts at preschool All About Me is one unit. Kindergarten does nursery rhymes and fables, and grade 1, fables and stories. Grade 2, fairy tales and tall tales. So it kind of carries along the content. And then you're writing and reading about the content. But there's other things too, like science, animals, plants, habitats. And then it goes from plants and farms to early world civilizations, Greek myths, and so on. It's just a really way to really pool for literacy. We know that vocabulary and the content has to be there to teach literacy. And I was very glad to see that in the literacy plan itself. So that's all. I just thought I'd share kind of an example
Thank you.
of that.
Thank you, Ms.
You know,
White.
you know me, I'm reading all this. So,
Last but not least,
I brought a visual aid and everyone
Oh.
get ready. 'Cause I'm gonna do something Dr. Nichols never thought I'd do, and I'm gonna praise the rule.
the roar.
You thought this day would come. But look at this thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's awesome.
It was, in my opinion, finally worth the money of putting it in there. This is really phenomenal work by
Mm-hmm.
John Wazoko, and I reached out to him to express my gratitude as well. But this is just so well done, and I think
Mhm.
presented our district in a really positive way. And congratulations as well to the Falls Mead Press on their new
Mhm.
style of publication, more space. They have yet to run any stories about our district in 2021, specifically about our district. And I've been keeping count because it's bothering me. So now that it's bigger, and I know that Phil Karen listens to our meetings, there's more space to write more stories about things that are happening here. And I don't care if he thinks they're good or bad. I would just like him to let people know that our district exists and things are happening here, and to get the news to people about what's going on in our district. So that's on that. The vaccination clinic was truly, it was a moving experience to be a part of. And I want to give credit to all my fellow board members for volunteering to be part of it as well, and to volunteering to help. We were all there to help make the day go well. And I'm very proud to serve with all of you people that were so willing to do that. I was personally moved to see us all there. And Drug Mart did a wonderful job. They had a strong commitment coming in that no vaccines would be wasted. They were able to call some of the elderly people on their wait list at the end and get them in and get them vaccinated. And the look of relief on those
Oh, yeah.
people
Yeah,
as they
that's-
walked in, finally getting the call that they could get a vaccine, was truly moving. And it gets us so much closer to getting our kids back in 5 days a week. I think waiting for Summit County Public Health to release what their recommendation is on whether it's 1 week or 2 weeks after your second vaccine. They're saying 2. So whenever we get that date, 2 weeks from then, we can start getting these kids back in school. And that's what everyone wants, whether they'll admit it or not. It's what we really all want. We want kids back. And on that note, the April 1st thing by Governor DeWine is such crap. It's just crap. Because it's based on this idea that how things were is how they should be, and that there's no learning about different ways to educate and different ways that kids want to learn. The one positive thing that I've seen is that kids have been engaged in many different ways of learning. And we need to listen to kids and hear what was beneficial about this, what different ways of learning were beneficial to you. And it's an opportunity to rethink what we teach, how much should really have to be taught in a year. That's the real kicker. How much do we have to shove down people's throats in a year? So how things are is not, how things were is not the solution to where things should be. This is such an opportunity, and I've said it, and I'll keep saying it, this is an opportunity to rethink how we should be educating kids. And the solution is not to go back to where we were before, because that, if we look at the numbers, was not the answer either. So it's crap. The goal should not be to force people to lose their summer, to try to get them back up to some standard that wasn't good in the first place.
Right.
People need a break. People don't need more. Parents don't want more. They don't want to not have a summer with their kids. They want a break to have fun and do enjoyable things and not have to fight about when to get them on Zoom. So I hope he gives up on that. I really do. Because we need to be realistic about what's going on. So
I hope we'll get an increase in state funding too, Anthony.
Oh, wow,
if he
Hold your
gives
breath.
up on this, I can almost stomach the cuts because it's just so terrible to think that we have to shove more
Yeah.
at families right now. I've not heard that from families that what they want is like to lose their weekends because now we have to teach their kids more, or that what they really desperately want is to lose their summer. That's not, we've all heard a lot from families, and I don't think any of us have heard that from the families, so. That's that.
And that does it for comments.
Fired up.
So there you go. We're ready for item J, executive session. Pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, section 121.22G1, it is hereby moved that the board adjourn to executive session for the purpose of considering the employment of an employee or official of the school district.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. White. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? We call the roll.
Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Moffitt?
Aye.
Ms. Schofield?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye. 7:49.